Hi there. In this Adobe Creative Cloud video, we'll quickly look at how we can create a web page with Dreamweaver. So I'll create a web page where I insert a bunch of common elements such as headings and lists and paragraphs, some links, and some images. I'll create a second file as well so we can quickly create a nav bar, which will be a library item, which is something that Dreamweaver allows us to work with to link to a second HTML web page. So I'm going to quickly, I have a folder on my desktop with the images. I'll make the link available in the details of this video. And so I've got this images folder sitting inside of a folder on my desktop. So when you create an HTML file and you add images to it, the images don't get embedded to that file, they get linked. So it's important that you maintain some sort of a directory structure. So I always have my HTML documents alongside my images folder if it's a small site. So I'm going to quickly open up Dreamweaver. I'm using Dreamweaver 2021, even though it's now 2023, it works just fine. There it is there. I'm going to quickly create a new HTML document and save it in the Dreamweaver folder on my desktop. So I'll choose File, New. It gives me a list of all of the technologies we can use to create a website. I'll call this my first Dreamweaver site or something like that. And this is an HTML document, HTML here. I'm not using any templates, however there are some great templates available. I'm not going to attach any CSS quite yet, and I'll quickly create this document. So that gives the document a title, however it doesn't actually save the document quite yet. So I'm going to choose File. I'm not going to set up the site quite yet, I'll do that separately. I'll choose File, Save, and put it in that location. Again, alongside images. I'll call the first file Index, and this name has some functionality. You got to use index all lowercase. I'll explain what that means later on. So it creates a new document. Notice it added what I entered in the title of the new document between these title tags. This is HTML. I'm just going to go back and switch to design. I'm only going to use design view for what we're looking at. I'm going to type in hello world. My name is Marcus, and I'll make that a heading 1. So you can click anywhere inside of a paragraph for some styles. Notice I have my properties panel available. I'm just going to reset my workspace here to standard. I'll reset standard so I can show you where I got that properties panel. So standard gives me files, CC libraries, insert CSS designer, document object model, assets and snippets. I use the properties panel all the time to add HTML. So if you go Window, Properties, notice the shortcut is Control F3. That makes a floating panel. So if you just drag it down to the bottom area until you get that little blue underline and shaded area, that means it's going to dock. So you can tuck it out of the way of your work by double clicking on its title bar. So you don't need to move it around to get it away from your work. So I'm going to make this a level 1 heading. And then I'm going to insert an image. So at this point it helps to define a site, but it's not required at this point. So I've already saved this index.html alongside a folder called images. So if I insert an image from that folder, a very simple path will be created, which doesn't require that I define a site quite yet. I will need to define one for the library item that I mentioned. So I'm just going to quickly insert an image. So we can do that under the Insert tab. So basically most things that you can insert are found here. We'll look at a few of these. I'm going to add an image, and that basically immediately pops me into the folder where this file is presently located. So I'm just going to grab my self-portrait from here. And it puts it in with its native dimensions. So this is the actual size of the image. You can override these. Generally, you want to override them via CSS, not HTML. I'll explain that as we go. And I'm going to say my favorite foods. I'm using Canadian spelling because I'm in Canada. And I'll make that format heading 2. A subheading, not because it's a second heading, but it's because it's a subheading. And I'll say tomatoes, avocados, puttanesca, that's what I'm having for lunch, Ethiopian, and Alu Prenta. So I'm going to make this an unordered list. I was going to say unorganized, unordered list, which means it's not numbered. So my tomatoes aren't necessarily my favorite food. So that's a couple elements there, heading 1, an image, heading 2, and then an unordered list. I'm going to quickly say my favorite films. So when I hit enter, it wants to create a 6th list item there. So to leave that list, I just press enter again. I think we can also use shift tab. Let me just explore that. Yeah, shift tab also works. So my favorite films. And again, I'll make that a heading 2. Again, it's not a heading 3. It's the 3rd heading on the page, but it's still the 2nd level of headings. I'll say Blade Runner. Buffalo 66. Can't even think of any right now. Road Warrior. Blue Velvet. And again, in this scenario, Blade Runner is my very first, so I'm going to use an ordered list. So that's unordered list, ordered list. I'm going to quickly show you how tables work. We need to use tables for tabular data. We can't use it to lay elements out like we used to. So I'm going to say some links you should visit. I'll make it a short list. So I'll choose table, and I'm going to make it 2 rows, 2 columns, just to keep it short. And generally for dimensions these days, we use a %. So that's dynamic to the screen size of the device we're looking at it on. So it's not an absolute dimension. And I'll just leave 1 pixel on for the border thickness for now. We can always override this stuff via CSS, which we'll look at later. So some sites I always use. I'll just add some good HTML sites. To start with. And site point. And W3 schools, and I always go to eBay. I tabbed from the last cell, and that added an extra row. I'm just going to undo that. But if you tab from the last cell in a table in Microsoft Word, the same thing happens. And I want to add links. These are absolute references, so that means that they're going to an actual URL, universal resource locator, which is outside of the site. So I'm just going to quickly grab those links. It's best to actually go and visit the site and grab the link from the address bar. So I'm going to copy that, and I paste it in this little link field in the properties panel. Now, if you're creating a link to an external site, I always choose the target _ blank. That means it'll open in something called a resource window. So it'll this site will remain open, and this will open a new tab or window depending on the browser. So I always use _ blank for these types of links. And I'll go to site point. So again, I always like to go and visit the site and grab the address from the address bar. I select all of the text in this situation because you can add a link to as little as 1 character, whereas for these headings I just clicked once in the heading. Now I'm going to paste that, and again, the reason I copy and paste from the address bar is it gave me all of that from the address bar, so it saves me a lot of keystrokes. And again, target _ blank for that one. NW3 schools. Great resource, by the way, for all of the web technologies. I would use Control V in real life, by the way, and target _ blank. Notice that I haven't changed the appearance of any of my content yet. It's best to do that via CSS. We'll look at how we can quickly modify it via CSS without actually getting into too much CSS in a moment. CSS means cascading style sheets. So that's 3 links. Again, those are absolute references. Always best to use _ blank. Well, you'll see we use that _ blank in other situations as well. I can resize these columns too, by the way, if you want to change the width of those columns. Right now I think they're absolute, 50%, good, yeah. So even though I'm dragging them around, it actually doesn't have any bearing on this. It's 50% regardless. That one's 50% as well. So one more type of link. I'm going to click at the end of my table, press enter. So as opposed to tabbing from the last field, it didn't give me another row. That one, I'm going to make this a heading 3 as well. And I'll say last updated by my email on, I'm going to insert the date. So we have a Dreamweaver date here. So this uses Dreamweaver code to update. Where's my date here? There it is there. So I want to use I always like to add a day, full month name, 4-digit year, and I like to add a time as well. So if I have a client watching my work, they'll see me updating in the middle of the night, and they'll be impressed that I'm burning the midnight oil. And I'll choose OK. And I'm going to add something called a mail to link. So this is a second kind of link. We have a couple. So we have email link in this insert. There it is there. It's a little bit funny. It doesn't look like I'm seeing the entire piece of text here, but if I click after the text there and use my left arrow on my keyboard, you'll see that it does indeed have all of the text. And I'll choose OK. That one I don't bother opening in a new resource window. It already does. It'll open your default email client. It'll compose a new message with this email in the to field. So that's pretty much the entire document there. That's as much as I want. I'm going to quickly change a couple of the page properties, which is getting into a little bit of the CSS. Oh, this should be a heading 2, not heading 3. So I'm going to click on page properties. What this will do is it'll embed some styles in the head portion of the index.html, and then it'll add some CSS, which again is a separate technology from HTML. So it allows us to change some of the stuff. So I'm going to pick up a font. I'm going to use I'll go ahead and use Cambria, and it allows us to choose a color. I'll use red for the text, and I can just click away to accept that. And then the background color, I'll use a pale yellow. And we can use a background image if we like. I'm going to quickly, actually I'm going to dispense with that. I'm not going to mess with the margins, and I'm going to choose apply. So basically we've added 3 pieces of CSS there. And okay. So if you want to look at the code, you can click on the little code link. You'll see everything we've done so far. So there's a bunch of HTML and some CSS here. I'm not going to get into exactly how it works, but you can visit that link, W3 Schools, if you like. There's a bunch of information about both of these technologies. And I'm going to go back to design, and I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to add a second image, or second page. So I'm going to save this one, and I'll create a new one. I'll call this one Gallery. By the way, this title will appear on the browser tab or the new window. It doesn't appear in the actual body of the document. So it's kind of like a machine readable heading 1. HTML5, and I'll go ahead and create, and I got to save this thing as well. I'm going to call it gallery, all lowercase, .html. This little portion down here should add HTML for you. You probably don't need to type it in, but I'm just a stickler, so I can choose save. And I'm going to add gallery, make it an H1, heading 1 that is. And I'm going to quickly add some images in another method. These are called rollovers, so these add a little bit of JavaScript, so a third technology. So that's a rollover image. And I'll go ahead and get my very first BW thumb. But what's going to happen is I'm going to have a black and white version of an image. When I mouse over, it'll become color. When I click on it, it'll open up a new image in a new tab. So I'll use that underscore blank again, and I'll have 5 images. So basically 3. If you notice the image name, I could probably just add this one first, and then strip away the underscore BNW, and then strip away the underscore thumb, so I don't have to keep on browsing, because I've used a naming convention that makes it very simple. So I could just go birds, I'll select that, I'll call it birds, and I'll copy and paste it. And alt text is required these days. And for a rollover image, I'm just going to get rid of the B&W. Again, this is just my naming convention I use for these images, and then I'm going to get rid of B&W thumb for this one. And it'll work perfectly. And I'm going to add a space, so I'm going to click to the right of that image to deselect it, and I'm going to hit space with my space bar. You only get one in HTML, by the way. And again, rollover image, and I'll get the next black and white thumbnail. And I'm going to copy and paste it. I'm using Control-C, Control-V. I'm going to call that Ghost. Type in Ghost for the alt text as well. I'll just add one more. I have 5. You can add all 5 if you want to practice this stuff, but I'm going to just have 3 because you get the idea. Oops, there we go. And okay, and one more. And house, house. Control-C, Control-V, get rid of the BW with its underscore, get rid of the underscore thumb, underscore BW, again because I was careful to name these things well, and again, alt text is required, and I choose OK. So I've got two files. I want to link them together via a nav bar. I would have additional files eventually for my website as well, but I'm going to quickly save this. And in order to view what we've done here, we can go to a live preview, or we can choose file, real-time preview. I'm using Google Chrome. F12 will also work in my situation because it's already set up. So if I mouse over my little birds, you get a color version. So that's what the rollover means. When I click on this thing, it's opening and replacing the original document, so I have to use back. So I have to do a little bit more work. Same thing here. But basically, you get a full-size one when you click. You get a color when you mouse over. So it works beautifully. And right now, this is index.html. We'll take a look at what that means. So I'm going to open up my Dreamweaver. This is called gallery.html, and I'm going to make these open up in their own. So we have target here in their own tab or window. Underscore blank will do that, just like we saw before with those absolute references. So I just need to add my nav bar, and I'm going to be updating this nav bar as I go. I'll be changing the appearance of it, adding more links. So I want this thing to be, this nav bar will also exist in more than one document. So I need kind of a singular repository for this thing, so that when I update it, it updates in all of the places it exists in. So we can use something called a library item for that. So I'm just going to press enter. I'm going to go and start creating this thing. I don't want heading 1, I want paragraph. And I'm just going to create a basic text-based nav bar. So I use square bracket, and I was typing home. That'll go to the index. And then I'm going to use something called a pipe symbol, which is shift backslash. And then I'll type in gallery. And I can add all of my links right now. I'll have one for contact, and maybe for bio as well. Again, shift backslash for that line there, and close square bracket. Now I want this home to go to index, so I can just double click on the word home, and for link, if I click on my little files menu here and I go to desktop items, there's my Dreamweaver there, and there's gallery and index. Now I can make this a little simpler so I don't have to navigate by choosing manage sites, and I'll define this as a site. The only thing I'm going to do is define the present folder, which is Dreamweaver on my desktop, as the site. There's a bunch of other stuff we can do as well, which we'll get into as we work. So I'm going to call this new site, and I'll call this Dreamweaver, and I'll locate that folder for my site. And I don't need to change anything else. I can just choose save. As long as it has a name and a local folder defined, we're done. So now you notice when I double click home, it brings me directly to my site. I don't have to navigate. Now to add a link is very visual. There's this little crosshair here. It's called point to file. You can just drag that to an existing file in your site. So I want home to go to the index, which is my first page, and you notice that pops right in. In this situation, I never make the target underscore blank. I'm navigating the actual site. I don't want all of the pages in my site open in my browser at once. I want them to be replaced by the one I click on. I'll do the same thing with gallery, and there we go. Now I'm going to do that, what I mentioned, I'm going to create a library item out of this. So basically what that means is there's a central point. When you update it, it will update all of the instances everywhere, every document that this thing exists in. So I'm going to select that entire thing. I'm going to go to my assets. I'm going to click on my little book, which is the library, and I'm going to click on this little plus sign here. Go. And I'm going to call this nav bar. I think that just required me to save. I press enter, And it asks me if I want to update. Yep, I always say yes to this no matter what, even if it confuses me. And then I'm going to quickly add this thing to my index as well. So I can just choose nav bar and insert. And it gets added to the second location. Now I'll just quickly create a new document and link to that so we can look at updating this thing. So I'm going to save this. Notice if you get a little asterisk there, that means the document's unsaved. That's why I quickly went and saved. And I'll quickly create a new document. I'll call this one contact. I'm not going to add any content quite yet. I'm just creating it so I can link to it and create. Say contact me. And make it a heading 1. And I'll save it as contact. Defaults to my presently selected site. And again, I want to insert that navigation bar here as well. There it is there. I can just click right on the icon and then insert. Now I want contact to go to contact on all 3 of these documents. I'll quickly save this one as well. Again, I notice the asterisk, so I quickly save. Control S also works. So if you want to manipulate this thing, you can just double click on it. So I double click on it, I double click on contact, and I link to contact, and I save it. Notice I get the little asterisks. It asks me if I want to update in all of the documents that exist in. Always update. I never don't. And I close. And these get little asterisks because now content in them have changed as well. We can go File, Save All. Saves us a bit of time, so everything gets saved. So now, where's my, this is my library item. I can close that. So now I have 3 documents, so if I quickly want to look at how this works, I choose File, and where are we here? Real-time preview is what I'm looking for, and Google Chrome F12 also works. So Home, Gallery, Contact. So this is a real-time preview, so the actual address isn't updating. There's ways we can do this though. So you notice the first one's different because we have the font settings that we made in the page properties for this document. I'm not going to do that for the other 2 documents. I'm going to eventually add a style sheet to change all 3 documents at the same time as far as the appearance of these things are concerned. So that's basically starting up Dreamweaver, creating a new HTML document, adding a bunch of elements, creating a couple of pages, and then looking at library items. Quite a few things. Thanks so much for watching.